All right, I want to introduce you now to Courtney Austrian, who is the U.S. Charge d'Affaires to the OSCE in Vienna. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Dana.
You've just come back from Ukraine, and were you sort of on this line of conflict? And can you tell me what you saw?
So yeah, I did do a really quick trip to Ukraine. It's the first time that we've been able to go since COVID to assess the situation there. And I was there visiting the special monitoring mission, and the OSCE has the special monitoring mission, which operates throughout Ukraine. And so I went to see particularly the Americans who are working for the SMM, and I got close to the line of contact, but for security reasons, I didn't go quite up to the line of contact.
Probably wouldn't be a good idea, because that line of contact is a line of conflict, and it is not a quiet one. I mean, the number of deaths on the Ukrainian side has been mounting, according to the reports that you've written.
Right, exactly. We monitor the situation. The SMM monitors the situation on a daily basis, 24/7. And unfortunately, you're right. It is not a quiet line of contact. The number of ceasefire violations continues to be of great concern, and the number of civilian casualties also continues to be of great concern to the OSCE and to the United States.
So how many countries are in the monitoring force? And Russia is part of that, are they not?
Oh, absolutely. Russia has to be part of it. That's the only way that this works, because this is an agreement that was made by the 57 nations up the OSCE. And so one of the unique maybe things about the OSCE is that we do things by consensus. So the fact that there is a special monitoring mission in Ukraine means that all 57 participating states agreed to this, including Russia, and Russia is part of the monitoring mission. I'm not sure exactly how many participating states have representation in the SMM right now, but I think it's probably about between 18 and 22.
So here's your report from September the 23rd. Russia's goal is to prevent the special monitoring mission from documenting the Russian forces, Russian equipment, Russian weapons, Russian convoys, Russian fuel trucks, and the other side of the line of conflict. This has always been a Russian-led conflict. Russia initiated it and continues to be the aggressor. Only Russia is responsible for the death and devastation it's caused. The civilian population continues to bear the brunt. I've read lots of releases in diplomatic speak over my career, and this one is a pretty straight arrow. I mean, you call Russia out as being directly behind the violence.
And we do that every week in the Permanent Council of the OSCE. And Russia responds every week in the Permanent Council of the OSCE. But we are very straightforward about the US perspective about what is happening in Ukraine. And it is very clear that this is a Russian-led conflict and that Russia is uniquely responsible for what is going on.
That's why I'm confused when you say that Russia has to be part of the monitoring mission.
Yep.
But they're just playing a duplicitous double game, are they not? I mean, a lot of people have called for Russia to be kicked off that force.
So access to the non-government controlled areas is dependent upon Russia agreeing to that access. And so in order for the SMM to function, Russia does give us the agreement for the SMM to be in the non-government controlled area. What Russia gets in return is that the SMM monitors almost all of Ukraine. And so they are able to also monitor activities in the government controlled areas and can be transparent about things that happen there as well.
But it's not working, is it? I mean, Russia's been closing down border points. They've been interfering with the patrols. They've been stopping a lot of the monitors from doing their work and seeing what they need to see.
Mm-hmm. There have been, recently in particular, there have been developments that the US government has been very unhappy about, including the closing of the border observation mission, which was on the border between Ukraine and Russia. And that is something that if you also look at some of the statements we've made, we were pretty unhappy about.
Why did they do it? What are they doing?
Well, You'd have to ask the Russians why they did that, to be honest with you. I'm not going to put words in their mouth.
I mean, the answer seems obvious, that they're trying to stop you from seeing what's crossing those border points.
Yeah, well, that is what I have alleged. That because those border observation missions have been closed, we lose a very important confidence building measure in terms of being able to see, at least in a limited way, what comes over the border between Russia and Ukraine.
It makes me think, when I hear it, that the situation is deteriorating.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, I think that it would be the lack of transparency does make it much harder to be optimistic in a lot of ways. That said, the SMM is still operating. They are still reporting, and they are very important eyes and ears on the ground.
We talk about, SMM and OSCE, and I don't want people to get lost in all of this. Can you put a human face on what the people of Ukraine, who are living literally in a battlefield there, what they are experiencing there, and what the human toll is on Ukrainian soldiers as well, and Russian soldiers?
Yeah. So I think it depends on which side of the border you're on. If you're in the non-government controlled areas, and again, this is drawn from SMM reporting because I'm not able to go to that area, but there is a lot of mingling of the proxy forces and civilians. So it is an area where the proxy forces fire across the line into the government controlled areas of Ukraine. And if there is a return of fire, there are civilians that are in harm's way. You also have a lot of pensioners who live on the non-government controlled side, but their pensions and their medical benefits are on the government controlled side of the line. And so to access those benefits, they have to go through the authorized crossing points. Problem is that those crossing points have been mostly closed with the pretext of it being COVID. And so whereas once 50,000 people a day were able to go across the border, it's a trickle these days. And so that leaves people who are very vulnerable in much worse situation in the non-government controlled areas. It also does families. So people can't see their grandparents, the grandparents can't see their children, brothers and sisters don't have an opportunity to get together. So there's a human toll in that regard as well. On the government controlled side, there is less of a mingling, but the Ukrainians have done a lot to try to improve the infrastructure at the government crossing, or sorry, at the authorized crossing points, so that in the event that they are opened up again, it will be an easier experience for the people who are crossing.
You call them proxy forces. The Kremlin would certainly disagree with that term, and they would say that these are rebels within Ukraine who want to stay more united with Russia than with some of the people pulling them towards Europe. And that this is a natural uprising, and that they have every right to, break away or be an autonomous area.
I would disagree with that assertion. It is very clear that Russia has been funding, has been providing oversight, has been organizing these forces, and their fingerprints are all over it.
Putin wrote in a recent article, when I was asked about the Russian-Ukrainian relations, I said that Russians and Ukrainians were one people, a single whole. These words were not driven by short-term considerations or prompted by the current political context. It's what I've said on numerous occasions and what I firmly believe. Can you translate that for me? I'm sorry, it's in English.
Yeah, no,
you understand English. There's a political intent to that statement.
I mean, I think that for Russia, the relationship with Ukraine has always been one where they have seen themselves as the big brother and as being the protector of Ukraine. And Ukrainian independence and the Ukraine's NATO aspirations, European aspirations are ones that sit very uncomfortably in Moscow.
Is Moscow playing a waiting game? They seem, this is where, what are we 8 years into this now?
We're in the 8th year. Yeah.
So the longer this goes on, do they feel that America and Western allies are going to get tired, and eventually they'll just say, yeah, okay, Russia can have the Crimea, and in this area, it's not in our national interests to continue to push back on Russia and its aggressive tactics?
So, I mean, I would say, Dana, that this is clearly out of the Russian playbook. We've seen it with Transnistria, we've seen it with Abkhazia and South Ossetia and Georgia. We're seeing it in Ukraine as well, where Russia, or Nagorno-Karabakh for that matter. I mean, these are all areas where dialing up or down the pressure has been a tactic of Russian foreign policy for a while. And I think that they probably do hope that at some point the West will get tired of playing this game. So far, we're not tired. So,
well, what would you say about the arming of Ukrainian forces now? Are they much different than they were 8 years ago in terms of the Ukrainians' ability to hold ground? And I know they're not trying to take ground there, as far as I know.
Yeah. So I'm not a military expert, so I'm just going to be, repeating what people have told me. But what I have been told is that the Ukrainian armed forces are significantly more prepared and better armed than they were in 2014. And so that in the event that there was a heating up of the conflict, it would be a very different situation than it was in 2014.
A lot of Ukrainians think that Russia will take more territory and that Russia will try to make a land grab there at some point. Is that what you get when you go to that area? Do you feel that?
I didn't feel it when I was visiting, but I also was not particularly talking to the Ukrainians when I was visiting. I do know that Ukrainian government officials, when they have come to Vienna, have made that point. There is clear concern that Russia will seek to capitalize on what is already done.
Russia plays a gas game in Ukraine. It can get very cold in the winter there when Russia turns off the gas. And Ukraine has always been a transit zone for gas coming to Europe. And now you have this pipeline with Germany, the Nord Stream 2, Ukraine, Poland may find themselves out in the cold to some degree. Does the gas game, and I don't want to trivialize it with that, does that play into this conflict?
It has not played into the conflict in a particular fashion to date. But Nord Stream 2 isn't actually functioning yet either. So I think that we just need to watch the situation. Moscow has made assurances, particularly to Germany, and we will hold them to those assurances.
You want to give me your last answer, and I promise it's my last question. Where do you fear this is going? I mean, it seems like a static conflict, a stalemate. Russia has kind of set up what some might call a buffer zone or security zone. They fear NATO expansion into Ukraine and Ukraine's thirst to become part of NATO and the EU. Do you think it's going to stay frozen, or are you concerned that the longer it is not resolved, the greater the chance that this conflict will deepen and become more dangerous?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a diplomat, I'm always in favor of a political solution, and I'm in favor of diplomatic negotiations. And so I, will hope that the negotiations that are ongoing will bear fruit. But a frozen conflict is in no one's interest, and a hot conflict is even worse. And so, I think that is the arc of possibility. But I'm hoping that we can unstick this one still.
Well, hope is important, but the reality is so far over the 8 years, we haven't unstuck it, right? So
no. And there are a lot of really smart people who've spent a lot of time trying to do that, and more smart people will continue to try to do it. And, it's when we stop talking to each other that we really have a problem.
Courtney Austrian, great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.